Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to episode 149. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Neil Emeigh. Neil is the founder and CEO of Rayobyte, a company he started at 21. Rayobyte serves over 5,000 customers, including Fortune 500 companies, with a focus on web scraping. Beyond his professional achievements, he has pushed his personal limits by experimenting with activities like an Ironman and participating in a 7-day silent meditation retreat. Despite a generous offer to sell his company, Neil chose to continue leading Rayobyte, driven by a vision to create a greater impact and give back to the world. Neil, so great to have you on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you, Naftali. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get here? What's your journey?
My journey started, I made my first dollar online when I think it was 14. It's the website Fiverr or Fiverr.com still exists today. This is 15 years ago. And I was writing articles for SEO. And I just found it so cool that I could sit behind a computer. This was 2009 and make $5 for a 500-word article that I could write. And my journey from there just carried me for trying new ideas and services, a lot in the internet marketing, SEO space. And then finally, my 100th idea probably is our current company today. And within 2 years, we went from $0 to 3 million in 2 years and just skyrocketed from there.
Wow. So I'm just curious, you sort of described your journey as being someone who is quick to come up with ideas, perhaps, or pursues things, a lot of curiosity. A lot of people don't follow that type of path. They're more traditional, following your educational path, etc. So I'm just curious to know, was there anything in particular that drove you at a young age to think about going online, making some money, and continuing to keep your mind open to thinking of ideas and applying those ideas in practice to allow you to do things like starting and succeeding with your company?
Yeah, nothing I could point to, but other than there was this video game, an MMORPG, kind of like a World of Warcraft, essentially, that my brother and I played growing up. And I was probably 10 at this point when we started playing this game, really young, but like playing against like adults. They were playing kids, adults could play this game. And I learned very quickly in that game that I could work smarter, not harder. So I could go out and hunt for gold and items and stuff in the game. And I could do that for hours and hours and hours and hours on end and get, say, 1,000 gold. Or what I learned at age 10, 11 is I basically had my own pawn shop. I would buy items low, sell them for high, buy them low. So here I was negotiating with grown adults saying, hey, I want to sell you this. And I'd say, well, sorry, I need to give you this price so that I can go sell it for your price. And on I did that. And I just found it so fascinating to work smarter, not harder. And then also in that same era, that game, instead of doing the hunting, which is sometimes necessary anyways, I wrote bots that played the game for me. Instead of doing it myself, I spent time writing the code, write it one time, and then it works for hours. And so I don't know, it all there in that area of my life. I just found that so cool. And so then my curiosity just kept going to cool things like that, I think.
Okay, so you mentioned it a couple of times, work smarter, not harder. And it's a bit of a cliche. We often say it, but what does it mean to you practically? Like, what if I'm not thinking about this game that you're describing, but I'm thinking about life or running a business or being part of a team, getting my stuff done? What would be some examples that you think of when you use the words work smarter, not harder, to allow people to accomplish more with less effort?
Yeah, and I want to be careful there because I consider I have a high degree of work ethic, and at my peaks I was, the typical startup 70, 80-hour weeks is always on, go. And so I think work ethic is very important as an entrepreneur and a startup. I don't think, in my opinion, you can have a multi-million-dollar company by working 30 hours a week. Some people do, and so but I do have an opinion. You do need to work really hard, especially at the early stages. But the comma in all of this is there's a danger of that it becomes only working hard, and then you're not stepping back and having some mindfulness to see the bigger picture, the forest from the trees. You're just, and I was doing this, is just diving. I was doing puzzle pieces, but not actually ever seeing the full puzzle. And so there's different periods in our company history where I lacked the vision and the foresight to get ahead of things because I was just so busy doing.
So do you have any advice then for people who are feeling like they're constantly, it's interesting because I literally just scheduled a blog post for early next week on the topic of working on your business and not in your business.
Oh gosh.
Right? Because that's really a critical piece. That's really what you were describing, right? You're working in your business, all the puzzles, all those different components, but you want to work on your business too. You want to be able to ultimately see the forest, not just the trees. You want to have the vision. You want to set the standard for everybody around you. What has been your go-to, so to speak, approach as it relates to that, to make the time, to create the space, to give yourself permission, all of those pieces? How's that worked?
I may have an unpopular but hopefully authentic answer to this, which is I'm not good at it. I'm really bad at working on the business in the regards that we're talking about scaling our company. As I said, when the company started, it was the 100th idea. And so I consider myself a creator and inventor, and maybe that resonates with somebody listening to this. And so when I started, we went from $0 to $0. The first 3 months was 100,000. Year one was 1 million. Year two was 3 million. And after that, our company's kind of tempered off, or we've had some, we're still growing, like, but it's linear. It's not exponential like it was then. And as I'm reflecting as a leader now, today, 9 years later, I am making moves to move myself out of a leadership position because I know that's not my strength. I know that I'm a creator and inventor, and I need to be closer, as deep in the weeds and close to the product as I can. And I need to empower, and maybe this is part of the answer, is empowering my leadership team members to take the reins more, so I can go work more closer to the product, innovation, R&D, and so forth.
Wow. So that's an interesting answer. I think there was a lot of wisdom in that. And I'm curious to know specifically, it is hard for people who get very invested, who built something, to be able to say, maybe I'm not really the right person to continue to lead it forward. Maybe I need to step aside. It's actually interesting because this is not at all the nature of our discussion, but as a Jew, I was very much focused, for example, on all the stuff going on in college campuses throughout the US and throughout the world, a lot of anti-Israel, a lot of, type of agitation. And specifically Columbia University, among some of the other universities, was front and center, whether because I live in the New York area or because of what happened on Capitol Hill. And just yesterday, I believe it was, the president of Columbia issued a letter of resignation. And her wording, and again, I'm not looking to ask you to say your thoughts on her or anything of this sort, but she used words something along the lines of, I'm not the right person to carry the mission forward. So that's a very difficult, she probably felt, let's call it political pressure and other pressure to, so to speak, say that. Most people may not say that on their own. You're saying it sounds like, because of certain plateau on the revenue side and the growth side, that's making you wonder whether or not you really are the right person to lead the company forward, or if you should be more in the type of role that really aligns with your skill set. What advice would you give to a leader who is wondering what his or her role should be moving forward, and to be able to have the honest, humbling, inner discussion or perhaps conversation with others about roles, responsibilities, and those kinds of things?
Yeah, there's great points, great questions. I have a lot of thoughts on this, because I'm in it, and you said the recognition that from a performance standpoint of our company is one part of it, but then there's another part which is more the emotional side of I use the word burnout carefully. I don't consider myself burned out. I think it's an overused word in the workplace that I'm careful about using, but I'm burned out trying like to make it happen, and it's not working. And so I'm looking at that and saying, gosh, I'm spending so much energy and I'm not seeing returns year over year over year. And where a lot of my research and thinking has brought me is looking at other successful companies, other successful leaders. What so many people don't realize, you look at your major companies, one, who's the person you think of when you think of Apple? Steve Jobs. A lot of people don't know, though, Steve Jobs was never CEO until they brought him back, but they're such a big company as a figurehead. They're billions of dollars. But Steve Jobs, for the first decade of their existence, was like some kind of just title, like head of this product department division. Number two is Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn. He ironically, I found this and just jumped out at me. He gave up the reins at a head count of 50 in his company. I'm at 50 right now. He said, I knew I was not the leader to lead this company into the next era. And he went on to search just three, the Sergey Brin and Larry Page with Google, handed to Eric Schmidt, or very early on as well, too. And so you look at these cases, but I think what society gets attached to are the cases of success. I would say the more limited ones, which is the Bill Gates of the world. Bill Gates started from zero. He was CEO. He was the run, and he made Microsoft into the powerhouse it is today. But I think that's the exception and not the rule. And I believe that most entrepreneurs, sorry, I'll speak for myself. I could not. I'm really good at the 0 to 1, let's say, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs excel at that. But then a lot of entrepreneurs like myself try convincing that we can be the Bill Gates, not necessarily attaching to him as an idol or anything, but like, oh, we can grow it, we can make it a billion. But no, that's not our skill set. And recognizing that takes a lot of maturity to admit that. So the advice I would give when people are thinking about that, an example you gave with Capitol Hill is being honest with yourself and I mean, it's easier said than done, but doing this reflection, asking what your skill sets are. And then what I've been doing in the last year or so on this journey is carving out time in my day when I can, and even just working late into the night when I don't have the time in my normal day to test where I think my skill set and where I get into flow at. So, okay, for me, I love building new products. So I've been carving out time in my evenings to go build some small products in our company, small tools, small widgets, things like that. And then I find myself getting in these flow states regularly, often. So I'm going, okay, I am right. This isn't just me just avoiding responsibility. Like I know this is where I should be. And so you have to do something, you have to test it. Not a lot of people can just leave their role right on a whim. I'm not doing that either. I'm testing it, making sure it's good. And then I'm going to set a plan in place to make sure the leadership team works around this.
Nice. Now, you don't have to respond to this because this is almost reaching probably too much into conjecture here. But I'm almost hearing in your situation and your response, the fact that, a person may at such a crossroads, let's say, for example, I'm a great founder, but I'm not necessarily the kind of person who could lead the company long term. The question of whether or not I sort of reintegrate myself into the original company in more of a specialized role, which was more akin to what I was doing initially, or if I leave the company fully or partially and take my talents to a new initiative, whether whether in different department or completely different initiative, because I do best starting, I do best iterating, I do best with new ideas and things like that. So my point is, I'm not asking you to say what your plans are or anything of the sort. I'm simply saying that I could see it manifesting for people in different ways. Some people, like you said, for yourself, might go back into the company and find a different role or recreate their role in a way that serves them. Some people might say, I've built this. There's a great leadership team. I'm going to stay involved, but I'm really going to focus my energies elsewhere because at this point, I've really maxed out to the largest degree what I can contribute to this company. And so I'm going to find a new way to be creative and contributory in all of that.
Yeah, well, I can answer that. As my intro shared, we had a generous offer to buy our company, and I turned it down because for us, I looked at that and I looked at what that reality would mean for me. It would mean I have a lot of money. What am I going to do next? I'm going to go start a new business. That's what I just know I would go do. And I looked at that and I said, well, why would I do that when I have this company and this company's purpose can be beyond what we sell as this one very specific scope of product. And so we've defined our purpose as a company is to help people bring their great ideas to life, which is, not ironic because that's what I like to, I bring my ideas to life. That's what I'm passionate about. I want to help other people bring their ideas to life. And so that's so broad beyond the web scraping scope that we sell today. And so I get the notion, and I'm not saying we'll never sell. Maybe it just makes sense. Maybe the market changes and like you just have to accept that. I'm not saying we won't, but today I'm very optimistic that I can remain in this company in this creator role, and while then empowering and letting a leadership team execute the one to end side of the company.
Mm. So let's transition to something else you talked about, or that I read in your bio, and that has to do with pushing your personal limits, right? Whether it's physical in terms of an Ironman, or the meditation, or something else. I'm curious to know, what is it that motivates you to push yourself in that way? Because a lot of people, and I'm a coach, but I also work out, and I also, live life. And so I experience it personally, but I also experience it with my clients. A lot of people really want to stay in their comfort zone, right? The things we like, the routines that we establish and all of that. It takes a certain mindset to continually, if it happens on occasion, it might just be circumstantial. There's no great indication there. But if I routinely say, where am I currently? And what am I capable of doing? And you kind of set that as a new standard and you push yourself to that end, it takes a certain mindset. So talk us through that.
My mindset, for right or wrong, is wrong in a lot of cases actually, but it's right in some. I like to see if I can do something. Once I've done it, then it becomes not so interesting to me anymore. And so when I look at something like the Ironman, I've done one, and well, enjoy is a complicated word with training and doing an Ironman, but I generally enjoyed it. And as I come out of it, I was still in great shape, and I thought, maybe I should do another one. That'd be fun. But then as I started training for another one, it wasn't joyful anymore. And I did a half Ironman, and I did it, and like doing a half, again, this is the wrong part. I judge myself. I'm like, Neil, a half's nothing. You did a full. Get your butt into gear. And so doing another one doesn't interest me because I've already done it. The only way I would be interested is if I was doing like our double Ironmans and triple Ironmans, and that's beyond what I'm willing to commit. It's just another level of commitment that I want. Same thing with the 7-day silent meditation retreat. I was at a time in my life where I was all over the 80 hours, and then work week would end, and I'd go drink with my buddies and have no sleep, and I'd just keep going. My whole week was chaotic, and something in me called me to look. I was going to Asia for a month to just travel by myself, first time traveling by myself, and then I just looked up online like meditation retreat. I found this. I'm like, ooh, that seems pretty difficult with my chaotic mind, as I'm just all over the place, to sit there for 7 days and not do anything but just breathe. Seemed like an Ironman caliber challenge, and it really was. And now that I've done that, I don't know, maybe I'll do another one maybe later on when I feel this chaos again, but that was 4 years ago, and I haven't felt like the itch to do it again. So yeah, I think that's maybe how I think.
You kind of preempted my next question, because I was curious to know. I think most people, if you put the two in front of them, would say the Ironman, but I'm curious to know which of those two challenges did you find to be more difficult?
Yeah, I would still lean on the Ironman, and not the race itself, which that may confuse people. It was I trained for 6 months. It was the daily commitment. There was not a day you could take off, because there just wasn't time for me to. It was 6 days a week of intense training, up to 16 hours a week. I was training, and I just couldn't take off. I couldn't slack on my sleep. I couldn't have fun. I couldn't do it. And if I did, then I was still up at 4 a.m. and I was doing it. So it was the training, not the actual race. I would say it was the hardest of it all.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts about, here's another thing that I spend a lot of time with my clients, and I do master classes on the topic, the issue of consistency, right? So it's one thing to be inspired. And I tell people all the time that you do not become productive, nor do you achieve anything great based off of motivation. And motivation is a great driver, but ultimately, if you can't harness or channel the motivation into deliberate, consistent, discipline-driven activities that you're doing on a regular basis, you're not going to get the kind of results that you seek. So I'm curious to know, as you're going through that 6 month training process, what was your primary driver? What was the why for you behind that training? And how did you deal with the many moments, I'm sure, where you didn't want to get up, or it felt too difficult, or whatever the excuse was that might have been floating through your mind? How did you push yourself beyond that to stay focused enough to be able to get to a point where you could actually compete?
Yeah, so my why, I wrote a blog post about this. My why was, it was in hindsight, not a good why. As I said, I was or no, sorry, this was different. This was another era of the company where, again, I just wasn't mindful of myself, my body, my soul, and it was an escapism of sorts, away from like addressing like how I felt and I got the 6 months, but I did it and I didn't recognize this as fine. I got to the finish line of the race, and I didn't feel joy. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just tired from 13 hours of doing the race. But then I woke up the next day after an awesome 12 hours of sleep, and I felt extreme sadness and extreme depression. And in reflecting on that, working with my coach, I came to realize very quickly, it didn't take long. I was like, oh my God, now I don't have an excuse to ignore what I've been just avoiding just in my life, just crap I needed to clean up in my life. And now I have to address that. What now? And I had this absence, this void. And so yeah, that was my why. Definitely not great, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about that, nevertheless. And then how did I stay consistent on those days that I didn't want to do it? Well, that's a lot of it is subconsciously I was driven by, well, if I stop, then it means I have to address this other crap. But on the other side, for me, the consistency in that was I had a peer group I was doing this with, all virtual, and we had a coach, and probably the coach was probably the most, which he was former world champion like 20 years ago in Ironman. He was sponsored by Nike, so he was like a big deal. And like something about me, I didn't want to let him down, like because he just had this like strict German approach to our training style, and I couldn't let myself let him down. And so yeah, more maybe peer pressure if anything.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons people get coaches, and that's one of the reasons people are part of
Exactly.
groups, because it does create that level of accountability. I can only imagine what it would be like to work with a all-world German
Exactly right.
coach. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a
No,
certain
no more words.
intensity.
You
There's a
get it.
certain
Yeah.
intensity there, right? We don't make jokes. We don't make jokes.
No, right, right,
I
right.
I can only imagine. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to dive into something else, and that has to do with change. So in our pre-recording conversation, I was under the assumption that you were still in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's what it says on your LinkedIn profile, only to find out that you're a bunch of hours ahead of me because you're in the Netherlands. And you told me that you moved for a relationship. And so I'm just curious to know, because the closest I've come to the Netherlands, I mean, I've flown over it on my way to Israel, but the closest I've come to actually being in the Netherlands is London, which is where my son lives. And I find that same language almost, but even there's such a cultural difference between how people operate in the UK versus how they operate in the United States. It's not as big a gap as perhaps some other countries, but it's more of a divide than oftentimes I think people would think, for a variety of reasons. So you've made a meaningful change in your life. I think you said you've been there for a couple of years at this point. Um, I'm not looking to dive into your experience per se, though you're certainly welcome to use that as a basis in your response. I'm curious to know, what is your approach in general to change? I'm talking about meaningful change now, not like a change in, running shoes. I'm talking about something more substantial, whether it's a way of acting on a daily basis, dealing with a new normal economically, in terms of what you're trying to do with your company, what you're doing in your personal life. What has been your approach to managing change? Because oftentimes I find that people are very, very turned off by and certainly scared by change. It's a really scary word. It's why change initiatives oftentimes fail in companies. What has been your experience? What's been your approach to managing personal and or professional change effectively?
Yeah, I think it goes back, it resonates with the comfort question. And I do think humans are wired to seek comfort, and so change is discomfort. We're changing what we know, and now we're putting ourselves out there into the unknown. My strategy and how I think about change, I do it. I consciously am aware that I'm very conscious that this scares me. I don't want to do this. No, I just want to go back. But in those moments, and I'm not perfect at all, and it's going to be like the 10% where I say, Neil, no, when you do change, you grow. And I remind myself, when you do change, you grow. And pretty much every time I've made small and major changes in my life, I grow in some way or another, or I learn, just like the Ironman, pushing myself, even though it wasn't for healthy reasons, I was doing it. I then learned, oh my gosh, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. Why were those wrong? And so change, I think, gives us that. So it's my perspective is seek it, even though it's uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable. I hate doing it, but I always feel better on the other side and appreciate the growth I get.
Yeah. No, beautiful. They say that you can't spell challenge without change, right? So the two of them go hand in hand, but it's the people, we often try to avoid, like you said, change and certainly things that are uncomfortable because we seek comfort. On the other hand, anyone who's grown and has made something meaningful out of themselves, typically they have a not so great upbringing, difficult family situation, something that forced them to really excel. The people who have it easy, the people who have it pretty straightforward without complication, yeah, you could still be great, but you don't necessarily have anything driving you to that. So you have this untapped potential within you. And I think that reframe that you were talking about before, that this is how I will grow, this is how I'll get better, is critical. Because if you don't have it in the back of your mind, then all that discomfort comes rushing to the fore, and you say it's not worth it, and you stay in bed or whatever that is that allows you to maintain that status quo.
Yeah.
So I have one final question for you in this segment, Neil, and I want to I ask it of all of my guests, but I find that obviously each one is going to take it in a different direction. So we all do have challenges, but more importantly, we all make mistakes, right? None of us are perfect. You've shared some of them already with us. I'm curious to know, Neil, for you, what has been the mistake that you made that set you up for future success, that allowed you to reorient or pivot in a way that has helped you become the person you are today?
Yeah, the one most major always sticks out to me. This question is, it was a major wake up call. It wasn't an intentional mistake. I recognized it as it was happening. Is one day at work, this is when we're in office. Now we're fully remote. We've always been fully remote mostly, but I had three people come up to me. Three people very close to me since the beginning of the company, and one of them was my brother. And one first person came in tears, and what they basically said, and I'm interpreting their words. They said, Neil, you're I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss on here, but you're too aggressive in your communications to me, Neil. And I say, okay, they're having a bad day. It's going to go on. This is early days in my career as a leader. Second person came to me in tears and said, Neil, you treat me like crap. You do this and this. And I even then had the naivety to say, oh, they're also having a bad day. Neil, get back to work. And this is one of my chaotic 80-hour weeks. The third person comes to me that day. Same thing, in tears. Unprompted, no meeting. It was just like they weren't talking to each other. It was just like the universe had to give me a 1-2, and it needed that final 3 punch to say, wake up, dude. You're treating people like crap. These are human beings that are working for you, working for your company. Wake up and treat them with some respect. And I was in I am a logical thinker, and I'm such a drive. I was not aware of emotional intelligence. And so my mistake as a leader was lacking EQ, not recognizing its value as being a leader. And from that moment on, I put a lot of conscious effort into increasing my EQ. It's not my default, so I still go back to it, but at least I have some awareness now today. So, okay, Neil, shoot, okay, rewire, go back into the situation, have some EQ with that. Yeah.
Nice. It's so interesting because I literally was having a conversation. I completed a productivity masterclass this week. And so I wrote a book called Becoming the Productive Boss. It's my second book. And I have 5 steps. in what leaders need to do in order to be more productive. And the last one, which was not part of my original list, is lead it, meaning to say productivity is often the outgrowth of how we lead our people. And if we don't lead correctly, then people get distraught, stressed out, upset, et cetera. You can't be productive in an environment. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So we need to have safety, and we need to have the basics physiologically in order to be able to achieve things like self-actualization. And the same thing I think is true when it comes to productivity. So we're talking about one of the systems that I often use to help people understand their personality and how that affects others. And it's a colored-based system. And I just showed them. I said, some people are very empathic and they want to connect, and everything's about relationships. And some people, it's sounded more like what you were describing, are much more doers, problem solvers. They want to get right in and get with the issue, and they're not interested in the quote unquote fluff, right? That doesn't speak to them. And maybe their language is the way they would want people to speak to them, or they wouldn't be offended by it. But by becoming more aware of this might work for me, but it doesn't work for them, it'll never become your default, because that's not how you're wired. And that doesn't make you bad. It just means that because you're not wired this way, you need to work harder to create more awareness, more sensitivity, and to compensate for areas where you might otherwise feel like, you just don't have that intrinsic thought process that this is my default. So I can relate very much to that.
You nailed it. Yeah.
I can relate very
much
much
I read
to
your
that.
book 8 years ago, and this is happening to me.
It's still not too late. It's still not too late. I wrote one on leadership too. So there's good stuff out there. But that's what caused me to write it. The first book, Becoming the New Boss. I actually have a copy right over here. The reason I wrote this book, and I'm a former school leader, and I didn't just write it for school leaders, I wrote it for anybody, is because the book is all about the things that I wish I knew and wish I was better equipped to do when I started. Because oftentimes you move from the classroom, even if you're an assistant principal or whatever it is, I'm talking about in a school environment now, there's a totally different mindset when you now are in charge of everything, the curriculum, the people, the budget, et cetera. And that's true for most people in the workplace as well. You, in your example, great ideas and all sorts of things that you can accomplish, but that once you have to turn it over to other people and have them really take the baton, and your role changes, and not everybody is ready for that or equipped for that. They need to understand themselves better so they can, in fact, create the kind of environment that will feed to long-lasting, success.
Yeah. So well said.
All right, so let's rapid fire here. I got a few questions for you, short and sweet. The worst mispronunciation of your last name?
Emeigh.
Emeigh. Okay, I might have actually tried that when I first met you, but I'm glad you set me straight quickly. All right, I already asked you the next one, which is harder: Ironman training or staying silent for a week. Next one, your go-to morning ritual?
Journaling.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how funny are you?
6.
I'm going to let you choose the next one because I originally wrote it with Lincoln, Nebraska in mind. Something cool or unknown about Lincoln or the Netherlands, where you are currently?
Where I'm at currently, Eindhoven is the host of PSV, the professional soccer team, which I didn't know, and a lot of people might know. So that's cool.
Okay.
Professional.
And finally, a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
For me, running. As long as I run, I can get crap done that day.
Awesome. It's so interesting because I always exercise first thing in the morning. Today being a Friday with the Sabbath this evening, I have like a lull in my day. So I decided to wait a little bit later just because I woke up a little bit later. But I will tell you, whenever I don't exercise first thing in the morning, I just don't feel the same pump. I don't feel physiologically as ready. So I don't know what time you run, but the exercise piece is critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Neil, how can people connect with you, learn more about your work? Where's the best place for them to find you?
Our company site is rayobyte.com. For me personally, I have my blog, neilemeigh.com, that you can follow along with any of these thoughts if any of this resonated.
Okay, awesome. And we're gonna put those links in the show notes. Before I let you go, please leave us, Neil, with one final life lesson.
life lesson is enjoy life to the fullest. You don't have there's no days are guaranteed.
Very profound, short, sweet, and to the point. Every day is a moment. Let's embrace it. Neil, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Thank you for your openness, if I may say, your vulnerability, your willingness to discuss the kinds of things that a lot of us grapple with, but don't necessarily have a means by which to articulate, or the willingness to do so. And to do so in public, I think, is an indication that you've really thought about it, grown from it, and now are inspiring other people through your journey. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to share this content with my audience.
Awesome. Thanks, Naftali. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.